Welcome, everybody, to the morning meeting where peace, love, and understanding pervades, and where Tim and I always get along, and me and Sean also. Uh, we have lots of feedback over the last 24 hours, and we appreciate that. Much of it positive. Some people say they'll never watch again. Typically, the reasons they give: the show is too pro-Trump, or the show's too pro-Harris. Go figure. Grateful to you for joining. We've got lots to go through, lots on the schedule today. There's the focus group the two-way did. We're going to show you some of that. Tim and Sean will discuss it. There's a new Trump ad that made Sean laugh, and we're going to talk about that, and also the aftermath of the assassination attempt. We'll talk about that. Vice President goes to Philadelphia. She does an interview with the National Association of Black Journalists. Everybody knows that Donald Trump's appearance before that group was controversial, and some say bad and undisciplined. We'll talk about that. President Trump has a town hall tonight in Flint, Michigan. And the Harris event is on at 2:30. You can watch it stream live on the NABJ website, so you'll enjoy that. The Trump event is at 7 Eastern, town hall in Flint. Tim Waltz has got an event at 10 in Macon, Georgia. Then he goes to Atlanta for some stuff. Then at 6:30 rally in Asheville, North Carolina. The Asheville paper has a complete rundown of what traffic changes you can expect and road closures. J.D. Vance, an event in Sparta, Michigan at 1:30, and then 5:30 in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. It is a big battleground state day. Doug Emhoff is doing fundraising in Washington. President Biden is meeting with the head of the World Bank. So, guys, this focus group, I strongly recommend it to everybody. 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes. Best insight I've gotten, thanks to the great booking by my colleagues and folks from the two-way community. It's not diverse racially, unfortunately, but it is geographically and in terms of past voting history. Very diverse group of high information voters who don't like either candidate. And fascinating reflection of why they're having trouble deciding. You can watch it yourself in full, but let us show you two clips from the focus group, and then Sean and Tim will react. I want to ask you about Vice President Harris first. And I want you to tell me in one or two words what your biggest worry is if she's elected president. Kim.
Her inexperience.
Sue.
She will be ramroded in Washington.
Just one or two?
Far left policies.
Okay. Ellen.
Unknown policies.
Okay. Steve.
Too liberal.
Okay. Nick.
Too establishment.
Mark.
Unproven.
Yeah. Lauren.
Far left.
Okay. And Jamie.
Unserious.
Okay. Same question about Donald Trump. If he's president again, one or two words, what's your biggest worry? Kim. Same question about Donald Trump. If he's president again, one or two words, what's your biggest worry? Kim. Ego. Sue.
His ego on steroids.
Ego. Sue. Ellen.
His ego on steroids.
Vision. Nick. Ellen.
Undisciplined.
Division.
Steve. Vision. Nick.
Undisciplined.
Steve.
Narcissism.
Mark.
No focus, chaos.
Okay. Lauren.
Similar to Ellen, I'd say 2020 culture craziness.
Yeah. And Jamie.
Lacks focus.
Is quite clear. And again, these are undecided voters, most of them deciding between Harris and Trump, guys. And their worries about Harris are all about policy and about her readiness to implement policies and who she'd hire. They're all about how she'd do the job and whether she's telling people enough. All the concerns about Trump were personality. Nobody said abortion. Nobody said tariffs will, cause higher consumer prices. So, Tim, what do you make of that? What this group of high information, undecided voters thought?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, on the Trump question, these all are immutable characteristics of a person that people know who he is. And to the question of like who's defined, who's undefined, he's defined in people's minds. People know who he is. They see the chaos that he brings, and that really encapsulates the full concern I think people have with him. And it plays into this question that we see a lot in polling, which is, does this person care about me? Would they put me first? And all those answers on that are a variation on are an answer to a variation of that question, which means no, which is top of concern for voters. Look, on the Harris question, I think it shows that there's still definition to be done, that there are still policy explanations to be made. I think undecided voters, it depends, but this group, like they dive deep into policy, want to know more about policy. I'm not sure every group of voter has questions about policy. A lot of it is like top line, what does your leadership style look like? What type of policies, Democratic or Republican, would we go with? But that's what sticks out to me in those two clips.
Sean.
I mean, there's nothing shocking. It reflects, I think, what we talk about quite often and what the polling has suggested. The lucky thing for Trump is that at the end of the day, the issues that people say that their number one issue that they'll be voting on goes back to the concerns that they have about Harris. They know Donald Trump. They know what they're buying. They know he is who he is. The concerns with Harris are ones that I think are bigger problems for her. Because if you've decided that you're not going to be with Trump, you've seen the personality, you've watched the movie, and it's not going to change. He's not going to, suddenly find a whole new way of life. So nothing shocking here. Luckily, I would rather have the issues to campaign on than personality.
Yeah. So you both have sort of exposed, not in a super spinny way. You both have put the best gloss on where this is. Tim says Trump can't change. Harris can be more specific, and she can address the problem. Sean says, people already know Trump. They bake that. That's priced into all of this, into the stock, and the issues are what voters care about. And that could, to some extent, could decide the election. I will say it's kind of incredible that as of right this minute, I don't see either of them trying to address this. Right? Trump doesn't seem to be talking about going golfing with his granddaughter.
She can address it, but let me just say
but
this.
She's not. Yeah,
you can't. I mean, he is who he is, and at 78, and it's not like he doesn't know it, right? He's made a choice that he's going to be who he is. That he finds that he thinks that it's appealing to a large swath of the voters, and so he's not going to change. And frankly, I don't know that it would undermine him. Suddenly, he woke up every day and said, "Hey, I just got out. I'm headed to a soup kitchen to administer some need aid, and then I'm going to help a hurt squirrel." People wouldn't buy it. It wouldn't be who he is. Conversely, I mean, this is sort of like. And then on the Harris side, everyone used to say about Biden, oh, if he just got out there and did more and did this and work, it's like, you don't think his staff knew that? It's just that at a certain age, he wasn't able to do that. And I think that, frankly, Harris's team isn't dumb. They know that there's a weakness there, and they see her in those moments like she did on WPVI last Friday, where she's not good at it. So it's not that they're not like, wow, this is news to us. It's that the problem is inherent to the candidate. And we'll see some of that today at the National Association of Black Journalists, whether or not, I mean, now granted, this is literally like going to a family outing here. But the idea is, these unscripted moments are where she doesn't do well.
But I will just say in this
Tim,
undecided group, just very quickly, I will say in this undecided group, you're hearing from the folks who are thinking about Harris, not that there's an authenticity problem or that she's not communicating effectively or that they don't believe that she cares about people like them. It is like policy question. So Sean, you're raising those concerns, but it doesn't seem like anyone in this group, and I'm not saying, and nobody has this concern, but it doesn't seem like anyone in this group that's part of their deciding factor. And look, if there are like more white papers coming, if we dive deeper into housing or small business or wages or something, that is a solvable problem. You can further define policy. Maybe
it's solvable in the abstract. Maybe she can't. I want to talk about whether she can go to solve it and whether she can help herself today at the NABJ event. But first, folks, if you want to see the full focus group, it'll be on our YouTube channel soon. I'll tweet it out. It'll be in the Substack. It also will be played in full tonight at 5 Eastern time for tonight's two-way. We'll show it in full at 5 Eastern time. And then at about 5:40 Eastern time, we'll have a panel of folks to talk about it, take your questions about the focus group. So all those ways for you to see it in full. And I strongly recommend it too. I think it's really compelling. So if you look at the times she's taken media questions, not counting gaggles and scrums, it's the CNN interview, it's the debate, and it's the WPVI interview. And I would argue, without fear of contradiction, except maybe by Tim, that she didn't take follow-up. She didn't get hard follow-ups in any of those, and that she dodged the hardest questions without really answering them, such as how she's dealing with inflation beyond the things she's already said, how she differs from Joe Biden. Why didn't they change the immigration policy, etc. So, Tim, do you expect the journalists at the National Association of Black Journalists today, do you expect them to ask the hardest follow-up she's gotten since assuming the nomination?
The hardest follow-up that she's gotten since the nomination.
Like, do you expect them to press her today the way she hasn't been pressed in the 2 interviews and at the debate?
I think that forum, I don't know how you would go through, I don't know how long the interview is supposed to be, but if it's similar to Trump's, which I think was scheduled for an hour and ended up being 30 minutes after they cut it short, I would be surprised if there are follow-up questions in that setting. I don't know how you don't do follow-up questions in that setting. It's also like more informal sit down. So there may be the toughest follow-ups so far from this interview.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, just to be blunt, you look at who's going to be questioning her. This is one of the Eugene Daniels from Politico has basically acted as a spokesperson for Kamala Harris for the last 3.5 years. This is not exactly, this isn't even Rachel Scott, was from ABC. This is literally like a home team advantage here.
Audrey, you got the buzzers and the bell ready for today? Have to have those ready. Audrey.
I do not, I'm afraid. I'm so sorry.
All right. Sean, I give you the buzzer. You are wrong and Tim is right. Even though this is a group of reporters, and particularly Eugene Daniels, who've written quite glowingly about her, I predict the toughest follow-up she's gotten today in this event.
Well, okay, so there's no bar, right? So she hasn't gotten any follow-up. So even if they say,
correct,
okay, is your seat warm? I mean, like, that's going to be considered a follow-up.
But the folks, I will just say, for the journalists who have followed Harris, who have been on the Harris beat, I'm thinking of the interview that Ested Herndon did with her that know her very well. They have asked tough questions. So like, there's always a question, right? If you're like too chummy with the press. But Mark, I'm talking about, this is like earlier, right? Like this is during her VP.
Yeah.
While she was not at the top of the ticket. There's always a question of like possible chumminess, right? Like you spend a lot of time, principal, press, but I think like he is an example of you can spend time around a candidate or a principal and still ask tough questions.
I need to go by and read the clip file on that reporter because I consider him and the other reporter Sean named to be the 2 people who've written the most about her and have written pretty favorably about her in the main. But we'll see about today. If you want to get a question in, please raise your hand. We'll call on the folks. Again, we like folks who haven't asked questions before. So please, if you'd like to be part of the conversation, raise your hand. All right. This is a perfect topic for the presumption of grace and peace, love, and understanding of this program. I'm just dumbfounded. Someone tried to kill President Trump apparently a couple days ago. And the rhetoric yesterday from both sides, including from President Trump, including from Democrats, was like a mud fight, was like a horrific back and forth hurling of accusations. And here's my question. Are they doing it because of just the tribal instinct that animates our politics? Like you bring a gun, I bring a bazooka. Or are they doing it? And let's start with President Trump. He's clearly going to raise money off of it. But does President Trump really see political advantage in accusing the Democrats of rhetoric to try to kill him? Is that a systematic, and is it a play only for the base, or does that appeal to centrist voters, Sean?
I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's a lot of things. I think it's instinct, it's play to the base, it's reflexive. And I think that there are some people that if you haven't seen it yet, he literally put out, I think it's 3.5 pages of Kamala Harris in particular, calling him a threat that needs to be eliminated and all this stuff. So they came with receipts. And I think part of this.
But Sean, they did come with receipts, but they tried to kill the guy again a couple days ago. Someone did. And the reaction is to say, let me accuse my opponents of being responsible for it.
Yes.
Like he wants to be president, but he wants to be president of all the people. And again, I'll ask him the same thing.
Hold on. But I think part of the problem, Mark, is that for a lot of folks who, and we've talked about this before, they don't see this. You watch the news, look at NBC, Time Magazine, USA Today. They acted like Trump deserved this, that it's, USA Today pretended it didn't happen. So for a lot of Americans, they don't get to see the other side. And I think what the Trump campaign in particular did was to say, you guys understand the rhetoric that we face every day? Because if you get your news from the New York Times, CNN, then you don't even realize what's happening and you think we're entirely wrong. This is what they say about us daily.
I get it. All right, Tim, how does your party some people have made intemperate comments and suggested President Trump has brought this on himself. I wouldn't say that I've heard anybody say he deserved it, but there's been rhetoric that's from people at this time with no real interval to say his actions, he shouldn't be playing golf. He's the extremist. He's the one who's poisoned our politics, and he brought this on himself, at least indirectly. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with the take or rhetoric that is he brought it upon himself. I don't think there is, for the actions of a crazy person who hid in the bushes for 12 hours. But I think to the larger question is, he doing an interview and saying this rhetoric, is what caused this person to act this way, and then engaging in the same rhetoric and calling people the enemy from within. I guess my question is just like, how do we get out of this, right? If that is where we are, is like, how do you get into a situation where cooler heads prevail? How can we, even for a day, take a break from it? Like, how do we step away from it? I think part of the problem is, we're like 49 days away from election day, so tensions are high. You also have in the background of this, and this is before this assassination attempt happened. I was looking through, there was a report that came out last week about political violence. This is something that everyone's concerned about. It's like 87% of the American people think that the temperature is too high, right? So you would think that leaders would look at that and say, there's some appetite here to turn the temperature down. Republicans, independents, Democrats, across the board.
Yeah. All right. Before we go to your questions, I want to sneak in one more thing. We show ads from both sides here today. We haven't had a Trump ad. We show Harris ads too. We have in the past. We will again. But I've gotten 2 emails in the last day from folks pointing out that their insurance premiums, health insurance premiums, their homeowners insurance have gone up. People get notices about these things often in the fall. And if you're someone who believes that everything we talk about is meaningless compared to just inflation, and that's going to power a Donald Trump victory, the Trump campaign seems to agree to a large extent. Let's look at the new Trump ad, please, which is, well, you know what the number is.
Another day under Bidenomics. Morning coffee costs 65% more. Gas for getting to work costs doubled. Workers' incomes down 3 straight years. Groceries cost you 20% more, and mortgage payments astronomical.
Bidenomics is working, and we are very proud of Bidenomics.
Pleasant dreams.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Great narrator says, pleasant dreams. Tim, you first. What do you think of it?
I mean, it's the right strategy for them, right? This is the message that they want to hammer. It's a message that they're seeing an advantage on. It's also hard, I think, for Democrats to go in an issue like this line by line and say gas prices are at a 4-year low, but they were really low because of COVID. Mortgage rate, cuts are coming. Wages are actually up 12 plus months. Like food prices have stopped going up. It's hard to do that. And the, Shauna said this before on here is if you're explaining, you're losing on the issue. And that's the difficulty here. And it's hard to look back and say, yeah, but it was like because of snarls and in global supply chains and everyone experienced inflation. So I guess I get why they are pressing on this issue.
Yeah, it's a great ad.
Okay.
I mean, and I think that the beautiful thing is it is fun. I mean, it does make you laugh. It's funny. I mean, the key in sometimes trying to break through the noise is to do something that has a message or an intonation or something that gets you to pay attention and to react. And I think that does it. Yeah.
All right. So Nikki Haley touted she was going to have a big new announcement today. People wondered what it was. Well, it turns out she's starting a weekly show on Sirius XM. So for those of you who are waiting in bated breath for that, you can tune right in. All right. Go to your questions as always.
Just actually, you might want to look at the time of when that show is going to happen, then not encourage people to tune in. I'm just saying.
No, it's 8 to 9. It's our lead-in.
All right. Fair enough.
8 to 9. Doesn't compete with us here. All right. Conway, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and let us know what's on your mind.
Thanks, Mark. Longtime fan since the Game Change days. Appreciate what you've done here on the platform. I'm in New York. Was born and raised in Kansas. So a lot of my family are kind of in the Trump camp. I've since left the nest and reside in Manhattan. So I'm as you can probably guess, more of them on the Kamala Harris side. I wanted to go back to the interview over the weekend that rolled out from Kamala, because I think there are probably two competing concepts can be true at the same time here. I, as a Kamala supporter, did not think it was a particularly great interview for her. I understand it was local media and that it was kind of just going back to the stump speech.
Conway, hold on just one second. Tim, you're listening, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go
Sorry,
ahead. Go ahead,
Tim,
Conway. Go ahead.
hey.
Just want to make sure Tim was not daydreaming. Go ahead. Not that great an interview. Keep going.
Yeah, sorry. Love you, Tim. Sorry about that, brother. But there was some missed opportunities there to provide specifics, which has been a major complaint from some who feel that she's not provided enough specificity on policy. Simultaneously, I think those of us who are supporters of her and people who are open to supporting her know enough about her experience. I think there was something in the polling that was like 70+% know her well, feel like they know her well enough, however you define that. From her experience as a senator, an AG, her character, her values, etc., that we feel comfortable that she's more than qualified as a candidate for this position. And so my question is, I want to acknowledge that while there are certainly, I think it's a totally fair question to ask anyone who's running for the presidency of the United States of America to provide specifics on policy. And I've read the Agenda 47 on Trump's website. It doesn't have a lot of specifics. It's got a lot of, what he's going to do, but not a lot of how he's going to do it. I think that it's a fair question to ask for those who are expressing outrage and the like of that this is somehow disqualifying of Kamala, the level of specificity that she's put out versus what Trump has put out. Isn't it also possible that some of those voices, again, acknowledging that there is a genuine, legitimate concern there that some are asking because who want to learn more, like the focus group you put on the other day. But it seems to me that some of those voices and maybe not engaging in this exercise as a truth-seeking exercise, but more of a confirmation bias.
Great point, Conway. And I think the question you raised should be debated thoroughly. I'll just give you some differences. Okay, he's been president, so we have a little bit more data because he's been president. He ran in primaries and caucuses and did lots of interviews. She was handed the nomination basically a few days ago, and she's not put out very much. And what we know about her national aspirations, expressed independently, is a series of positions she took in 2019 that she's now repudiated almost entirely through the mouths of others, anonymous people. So those are all, I think, differences with distinctions between her and Donald Trump. They're not everything, and your characterization of Trump's vagueness and the failures of some of the policies he pursued as president and some of the new policies like the tariffs that are dangerous, his claiming that he cares about the deficit when he's got no record of caring about the deficit. There's plenty on the other side, but I think the things I listed are listed in good faith, and it's unprecedented. The things she's done to become the nominee, it's unprecedented how little scrutiny she's got, how little she's had to engage with voters. Forget the press. If you run in Iowa, New Hampshire, you got to do town halls and you got to take press questions on policy. She didn't have to do any of that. And so that's why I think there's a greater, I'd say, need to press her. Not that there's no need to press Trump, but a greater need to press her because of the differences I listed, which are pretty meaningful to my mind for voters who want to know more. And when you see the whole focus group, you'll see when I ask them, has she done enough to explain? Do you want her to differentiate herself from Joe Biden? Has she done enough to do it? All 8 of them said they want to know about that, and she's not done it. And that's meaningful because she took these positions in 2019, and those positions are about big stuff, right? Big stuff, not small positions. She took them. She seems to want to repudiate them, but not explain. It hasn't been asked to explain the change. Sean and Tim, what do you guys think?
I concur with you, I mean, this is very unique that she has gotten away with what she is and hasn't been able to, I mean, I think the point that you're making about she repudiates 2019, which she actually doesn't. It's anonymous aides that do it. Then she doesn't tell you why. When asked a couple times about it, just says my values. Well, values would actually go the opposite way. If you believe in something principally, you should say the only reason I changed is because something shifted inherently in terms of my thinking or an experience that I've had. So I agree with the way that you frame this, Mark. And then the last thing I would just say is and I notice this sometimes in the chat when we're talking about an issue where people add facts, and I hate to be blunt about this, but in politics, it's so much about perception and how you present yourself. And I mean, I think I've said this before, but there's a lot of people in Washington. It's always like, what's after your comma, right? So Congressman so-and-so, a prolific fundraiser. Sometimes they're not that great of a fundraiser. They just had a really great fundraising quarter early on in their career, and the moniker stayed with them forever. And so you get titles or tagged with something early on, and it's hard to get rid of it. So I only say that because in her case, she got tagged early on with not having positions, and now she has to figure out how to get rid of it.
Tim.
Yeah. Look, I would say, Conway, to your point, there are people who press that question in bad faith. There are people who press that question in good faith and who honestly want to know more. And I think you see in the center of the conversation that we have right now is that small sliver of undecided voters, right? And when you were talking to those, 5 to 10%, depending on where you are, you get into idiosyncrasies, right? And that means you get pulled sometimes more deeply into specific policy. So I think the bar is different for her in terms of explaining policy for some of the reasons that, Mark explained. But I do think the reason that you have seen people, split to Harris Trump camps and kind of go where they are, and why in the Suffolk poll, for example, 97% of Harris voters, I think, say that their mind is made up. They've picked her, their mind is made up, is that the big questions about abortion, healthcare, general economic policy, people can identify. But yeah, there's a group of people we're all fighting over right now, and they're going to say they want to hear more, and we have to figure out how to tell them more.
Conway, thank you, man. Come back regularly. Enjoyed having you on. Enjoy Manhattan. Here it's nice. Deborah, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
Morning, guys. I am in New York City. And I just want to say that we all say when we're not from the swing states that we're irrelevant, but we're not. I think this is really important to hear from folks who are talking to people. So yes, my vote won't matter, but I think my voice does. So thank you for having me anyway. I want to say 2 points, one to the violent rhetoric and one to the focus group. I think it's gaslighting what they're doing right now to talk about which side is producing violent rhetoric, when we have a constant stream of they're coming for your guns, they're taking your jobs, they're going to rape and murder your family, calling people who chanted "Hang Mike Pence patriots and heroes." This speaks to mentally ill people's lizard brains, and that's what's incredibly, incredibly dangerous. They're coming for your democracy doesn't quite hit in the same lizard brain spot. That said,
Deborah, I just want to make clear you said all of that with the presumption of grace towards everyone. Just making clear that that's true. Second point.
The second point is on the focus group, which was absolutely fascinating. However, speaking as an independent, I think undecided doesn't equal independent. Not liking either candidate doesn't mean you're an independent. The voters the voters in the focus group were undecided only because it's Trump, in my opinion. If it was anyone other than Trump and they kind of said that, they'd all be voting for the Republican. These were all right-leaning people.
It's not the case, Deborah. You're just saying that. When you watch the full focus group, you'll see we say who people voted for. Many of them voted for Clinton or Biden in the past. They're not all right-leaning at all. So that's just wrong what you're saying.
I think the evidence of that is exactly what people were saying about policy versus personality. I
don't agree with you, Deb. I just don't agree with you, Deborah.
The full group.
Yeah. It's wrong for you to characterize it. And the group itself, when they were asked, only one person thought it was Trump-leaning. The other 7 thought they were a pretty neutral group. All right, Deborah, thank you. Come back often. We like having you on. All right, guys, I brought you two together. Oops, sorry, I did that wrong. I brought you two in together. And just quickly, first David and then Michael. David, just tell people who don't know who you're for and where you are, and stop right there after you do that.
I am a New Jersey resident, so my vote doesn't matter. I voted for Trump before. I didn't really want to see him be the candidate. I just thought his negatives were too high.
David, just hold on, David. Just tell us, everybody, who are you going to vote for this time?
I'm going to reluctantly vote for Trump.
Okay. And
not by
Michael, David's in New Jersey and voting for Trump. Where are you and who are you voting for? You know?
I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm voting for Trump.
Okay, so we had 2 Harris supporters. Now we've got 2 Trump supporters. David, you first ask your question, please, and warn our affiliates. We are going to go a little bit over today. David.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed Two Ways. First time I've been on the app. My question really is, and it was discussed a little tonight. I mean, I think Harris has at least a 50%, maybe even more than that, to be elected president. I'd like a little bit of discussion on what the Harris presidency would look like. I guess I believe it's going to be more or less like a continuation of the Biden presidency. I'd like to see, I don't see how it's going to be different. They're going to have basically the same people from the Obama and Biden administration, it seems to me. And one of my biggest concerns as to what to lower the cost in the United States is the whole energy policy. I mean, I guess I don't see a Harris administration upending the Biden administration push for all the renewables and clean energy.
Yep.
And that's in New Jersey, energy prices are skyrocketing in New Jersey.
David, hold on 1 second, David. One of the things that came up in the focus group, I asked them to explain what Donald Trump's economic philosophy was or is, and they had no trouble listing kind of 4 pillars of what Donald Trump: deregulation, more energy production, tax cuts, one other thing, which I'm currently forgetting, but something we all know. And then I asked them for Vice President Harris, and they basically said, maybe she's like Biden, they don't know. Hold right there, David. Michael, your question, please.
First off, I love the show. I came across it on the YouTube algorithm, and I've been addicted ever since.
Tell all your friends. We need more Austin. We need more Austin members. So tell all your friends, please.
No one pays attention to politics as much as me and my friend group. In the 2020 election, there were, during COVID, there were extending early voting. It seemed like a lot of laws were changed. What I haven't heard anyone talk about, and I'm wondering if y'all know or have any insight, is what will the impact be, since that's not going to be the case this time? The early voting is not going to be extended. How's that going to impact Republicans versus Democrats?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't be sure of that, right? We've already seen, for instance, in North Carolina and Pennsylvania, early voting's been delayed. And I think we're going to see, because there are lots of lawyers involved and stuff happens in election administration. I think not COVID driven, obviously, and probably not at the scale. But I would be surprised if we didn't see in every battleground state some sort of legal challenge to election administration, drop boxes, deadlines, etc. And one of the things we're trying to do here is build some programming so that there's transparency there, so that the election administrators have an opportunity to say, hey, here's why we made this decision. We didn't do it to help Donald Trump, or we didn't do it to help Kamala Harris. We did it in the interest of the people of our state or our Commonwealth to make these changes to make the vote more fair. But every time you make a change, you potentially and sometimes definitely benefit one of the two sides, and they've got to do their best to avoid that. And if they do something that benefits one side or seems to, or the perception is, they have to explain why it's in the public interest. Because the way they do it now is to just kind of do it, and then people go crazy, and of course it opens the door to claiming the election was not on the up.
Is that going to impact Trump or Harris? I would think it'd impact Trump more, because Republicans don't vote early.
Yeah, it could, particularly if the Republicans don't figure out the rules and the voters are unsophisticated. Most of the battleground states have Democratic governors. Most of the battleground states, with the exception of Georgia and Nevada, all of them. So 5 of the 7 have Democratic governors. And election administration doesn't fall directly to the governors, but the governors have a say. So Tim, two topics for you to comment on. One is, what would a Harris presidency be like, in the other election administration? You may engage one or both.
The election administration question is really interesting, and the USA Today Suffolk poll that came out yesterday asked a question about how people are planning to vote, and 80-64 election day voting for the GOP, 31-14 for Democrats, mail-in or absentee. And it is this continual effort, I think, by Democrats to get your voters out to bank those votes. and Republicans trying to catch up in that space, and they just haven't. And part of it is because the electorate for them has been conditioned not to want to do it. And I thought that was an interesting tidbit in that poll. As to the question of what a Harris administration would look like, I think there are a variety of things. You mentioned energy policy. I think there are a lot of tracks laid in the IRA, whether that is now getting that funding out, that climate financing funding out, and creating clean energy jobs. In terms of oil production, we still see oil production at a record highs, higher than it was in the Trump administration. And then look, there are a whole bunch of other defining issues in that, and that could be part of her policy, right? We're talking, but not as much about abortion policy, not as much about healthcare policy. So I think there's a lot in there.
Sean.
Real quick, I think a Harris administration looks, similar to Biden, less trips to Delaware and further to the left, especially on cultural issues. On the voting stuff, I mean, I will largely agree with your analysis. I think this is, we got asked a couple of weeks ago about the border, and I said, the biggest issue for me is that it's a rule of law issue. And it's the same thing with voting. You can't just change rules because you don't like them in the lead up to an election. We have a process. We have a legislature and county officials, et cetera. And last cycle, we saw that a bunch of people decided on their own to make changes to how we vote because it benefited one side. And I think that undermined the integrity of the voting system. It caused a lot of concerns. And I think obviously this time you have a lot more. I did an entire show on this last night, if anyone's interested, with some of the folks from America First Legal and what they're doing. But part of this is to maintain the law. And if you don't like it in a particular state, then go through the process and change it. But 50 days out or 60 days out saying we're going to allow this to happen or not, or you're going to take new folks in, or, a signature is no longer required. If that's the law, that's the law. And I think that every time that we do something that changes it without an official act doing it, meaning the proper legislative process or what have you, we undermine trust in the system. And I hope and I think that Republicans are a lot more on their game this time.
Yep. All right, Michael and David, you're both 7 referrals to two-way away from winning either a two-way baseball cap or a Tim Hogan mouse pad. So keep it up. Keep referring folks in this direction. Thank you both for joining and for being part of it. And again, we'd love for you to bring more of your friends in, including people from Austin, because Keep Austin Weird is not necessarily antithetical to what we're trying to do here. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Again, we'll be back. Tonight, 5 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to watch the focus group together and then talk about it. And you can ask questions about the group, the people. Again, don't assume you know who the group is. I can tell you they're undecided voters from the battleground states whose past voting histories vary widely. And some of them are quite liberal. Some of them are more conservative or libertarian. But they're all trying to decide who to vote for. And because they all live in battleground states, their votes matter a lot. Everybody's vote matters, but their votes matter a lot. So join us tonight at 5 Eastern. We'll play the focus group. It's about 35 minutes, and we'll talk about it as long as people have questions with the great panel. Tomorrow, we'll be back at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And then tomorrow also at 3 p.m. Eastern time, special two-way with one of the most important financial journalists in American history, I would argue. Jim Grant will be here for his debut on the platform. The Fed will announce their decision slightly earlier in the day about interest rates. And then you'll have an opportunity to talk to Jim Grant and ask him what it all means for the economy, for the election, for everything else. So 5 o'clock tonight, 9 a.m. tomorrow, and then again, Jim Grant making his debut on the platform at 3 p.m. Eastern time. We hope you'll join for all of those. Tim and Sean, thank you both. Thanks for everybody who had questions. We'll see everybody at 5 o'clock tonight. Have a great day.